If you're anything like me, you are forever planning your future reading. You watch YouTube videos about people talking about books. You subscribe to mailing lists from publishers or booksellers. You've got your ear to the ground. You know what you like. There is no shortage of things to read, and you want to read them all, and you make meticulous plans. But then those plans get interrupted by a whole stack of books that I have right here off of camera that you weren't planning on reading. It makes it very difficult to cross anything off the TBR when you keep getting interrupted by other books, because there's no shortage of good books out there. And so anyway, today I've got a stack of books that I want to talk about that interrupted my reading plans. So, okay, the first book that we're going to talk about today is The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. I've never read anything by Emma Donoghue before. She's maybe better known for her book Room. I haven't read that or seen the movie. I have not seen the movie. I actually came across The Wonder completely by accident. I was over at my local library and they had a display of historical fiction. I started browsing that. I just decided to pick one of the books off the shelf. There's a spoon on the cover, and that's it. I didn't know if this was a historical fiction about spoons. I had no idea. And so I like going into books completely blind sometimes. That doesn't often or doesn't always work out. Sometimes those books end up in the DNF pile. But this time it worked out. Nurse Wright is an English nurse trained by Florence Nightingale. So this is the mid 1800s. She has been called over to Ireland to investigate the claims of this family who say that their 11-year-old daughter, Anna O'Donnell, has not eaten anything in 4 months. In this era, there's a lot of fervish religious belief. There's a lot of superstitions. We are just a few years, like 7 years after the end of the potato famine. So all of these elements really come together and they mix in with each other and they all kind of inform one another. So half of the countryside is in hysterics about how Anna O'Donnell should be the next canonized saint because this is a miracle. The other half of the countryside thinks it's a family of charlatans and that they're giving Ireland a bad name. So a town commission brings in a nurse and a local nun to sit watch round the clock of Anna O'Donnell for 14 days to confirm or deny the claim that she has not eaten anything. Is this an elaborate hoax or is this a bona fide miracle? The bulk of this book focuses on the watch between Nurse Wright and Anna and the kind of unexpected friendship that forms between the two of them. Now, Emma Donoghue has done a fantastic job here with all of the characters, but especially with this relationship between Nurse Wright and Anna O'Donnell. This is a very tender book. It's an infuriating book. So after finishing the book, I read a number of reviews on Goodreads, and most of them are really positive. The ones that are negative seem to complain that nothing really happens, that it's really boring, the first 100 pages are a waste of time. Those kinds of reviews typically annoy me. Not that I've never been bored by a book, but for a book that's just under 300 pages, to say that nothing happens in the first half of the book. Do you want these characters to be developed? Do you want the story to be laid out? Do you want to get a sense of time and place in this history? Do you want that? Or do you want dragons to fly over the mountains and just set fire to the countryside? Like, what book do you think you're reading? So just ignore those reviews. This book is fantastic. And it's not boring. If you like characters and you like a sense of just pervasive, nonstop tension at all times, you're gonna love this book. So just read The Wonder. I quite liked this one. All right, the next book up we've got that I wasn't planning on reading is What Art Does by Brian Eno. This is a tiny little book. It's a little nonfiction book about Brian Eno's reflections on what is art and what it does. Brian Eno is a rock and roll Hall of Fame musician from Roxy Music. He spent the 80s and 90s building a name for himself, producing records for the likes of U2. And so for somebody who's spent his lifetime in the arts, I thought this would be an interesting look at his thoughts on what art is and what it does. This is like sparsely worded and heavily illustrated. So this is, say, an art object. A painting is an art object. A sticker on somebody's water bottle is an art object. Anything that isn't strictly necessary that we use for decoration, ornamentation, things to spice up our lives, things that isn't strictly utilitarian, right? Putting orange shoelaces in your hiking boots is art. So those are the art objects. We are then the receivers of the art, and it's somewhere in between where the art happens. It's our interpretation of the art object. And so then what art does is it evokes feelings that are either alive in us already, whether they are healthy or whether they are dormant, or they create new feelings, things that we have never experienced before. And so art is a safe way to experience new thoughts. You can walk out of a movie theater if you don't like it, if you don't like the movie. You can turn the radio station to a different station if you don't like the song. You can close a book if you don't like the book, to no harm to yourself. You can choose to disengage with the art safely, or you can engage with it and experience your own feelings or new feelings or be exposed to new ideas. And that is the purpose of art. It is a safe way for you to grow and understand yourself as a person. So I thought that was a good book. So this book is one man's interpretation of what art is and what art does in this day and in this age. Okay, so the next book is Dead Mile by Joe Furness. This is a unique murder mystery. I've never quite heard a story like this one before. Now, I first heard of this book on the channel Criminolly. Ollie at Criminolly read this book last year, but it didn't become available in the United States until this spring. So I had to pre-order the book and wait like 8 months for this book to come out here. So this came in the mail several weeks ago. And this is another book that I just sat down, I put everything else on hold, and I burned through this in one single day. So in Dead Mile, Joe Furness presents us with a locked room mystery. And this one is a little different. It takes place in a traffic jam. The circumstances required to make this whole scenario work, to turn it into a locked room where nobody can get in and get out with the high fencing and the reason for the traffic jam and why no other cops can show up. All of those things are very contrived and a little outrageous. But I let that slide because I want this scenario to arise. So stuck in this traffic jam with everybody else, including the murdered person, is Beatrice Kidd, Sergeant Beatrice Kidd. She is a London copper. So nobody has left the scene since all the cars came to a halt, and the murder had to have happened after the cars had stopped because the dead man is the driver. So who committed this murder and why didn't anybody see anything? Somebody must be lying, right? So Sergeant Kidd is trying to solve this murder before the traffic gets flowing again and she loses her suspect. But in the meantime, they're all trapped in a traffic jam with a murderer. I found this to be just a really delightful read. I'm actually going to hand this book off to my mother. She reads about 100 murder mystery novels a year, and I'm really interested to see what she thinks. So, Ma, this is coming to you real soon. Elmore Leonard, this guy, is one of America's best crime writers ever. He has written over 50 novels. A lot of his books and short stories have been adapted into movies, TV shows, shows like Justified and Get Shorty. And then his book Rum Punch was adapted by Quentin Tarantino for his movie Jackie Brown, and that is I have the movie tie-in version of this book that I read. Rum Punch is a crime novel and takes place in South Florida. And the action of the book centers around the clients of a bail bondsman named Max Cherry. One of the clients is, what's his damn name? Ordell Robbie. He's a crime lord. Ordell Robbie is the bad guy. Okay, so he also has Jackie Burke. In Tarantino's film, it was changed to Jackie Brown. The book, she's Jackie Burke. She's a flight attendant who works for small airlines that flies off to, was it Jamaica? Yes, to Jamaica. And that's where Ordell Robbie's whole wealth is stored up. It's offshore down in Jamaica, but he's trying to bring all of his cash to America for a big deal. And he calls this operation Rum Punch. So when we meet Jackie Burke, she's been ratted out. And so federal agents meet her at the airport, and she's taken into custody. They ask her a lot of questions, and now Ordell Robbie has to bail her out. And this investigation throws a huge wrench into Operation Rum Punch. And so you've got Jackie Burke, you got the bail bondsman, you got Ordell Robbie, you've got Ordell Robbie's friend Louis Guerra, and a few other well-rounded characters who are all vying for their piece of the pie. How is this going to play out? Who's gonna benefit? Who's gonna get the money? Is anybody gonna get the money? Are they all gonna die, or are they all gonna go to jail? Promises are made, backs are stabbed. It's just all around a hell of a lot of fun. It's just a rip-roaring good time. Reading these kinds of books, especially Elmore Leonard's books, I really like him. His books are always like being carried away by a swift river. You're just going downstream so fast following this plot. His writing is efficient and clean, and he just expertly leverages all of the distinctions of each one of his characters to a T. So read Rum Punch. It is delightfully devious, and it's just a ripping good time. Okay, next up, change of pace. We've got a book of essays, a collection of essays here by David Foster Wallace called Consider the Lobster. So this is about 340 pages, and how many essays are in here? There's 10 essays and 340 pages. Some of them are shorter than others, obviously. So one of the longer essays in here is Up Simba, which Wallace was hired by Rolling Stone to write. He followed John McCain on the campaign trail back in, I guess it would have been 2004, or for the 2004 elections. And then the other long one is my favorite essay in this bunch, Authority and American Usage. American usage as in the American usage of the English language. We are talking about next level grammar Nazi stuff, okay? I know David Foster Wallace is known for his extravagant and sometimes excessive use of footnotes. The presentation and the formatting of his essays, like some of them are just, printed out emails here. So I'm far from what you would call a linguist, but I do like the discussion around the study of the English language. I've read Bill Bryson's The Mother Tongue. I love that book. This essay goes even deeper than that. It focuses on who has the authority to decide what the English language is. And it is a remarkably nuanced take. I loved it. It's extremely informed and erudite, just as all of David Foster Wallace's works have pretensions to be. The other essays in this collection, the title one, Consider the Lobster, is about a Maine lobster event. He considers the animal cruelty aspect of boiling lobsters alive. Again, another remarkably nuanced take that you might not expect. The first essay in the bunch is about the porn industry and their annual awards show. That goes pretty deep, deeper into the production of pornography than I'd ever even considered. That was kind of a shocking way to open a collection of essays. There's an essay about Kafka and how he approaches teaching Kafka to his students. And then there's an essay about John Updike, really contrasting the very high quality of Updike's prose with the appalling lack of self-awareness Updike seems to have. There's a booktube channel that I watch called Supposedly Fun, and Greg over there hates John Updike, and the way that he talks about him makes me not want to read him. And after reading David Foster Wallace's essay on Updike, I don't think the best prose in the world could make me want to read a book by a guy like that. So there's an essay here about Joseph Frank's Dostoevsky. So Joseph Frank was writing has written a series of Dostoevsky biographies, kind of taking his life in stages. And I guess these are like the preeminent Dostoevsky biographies. It makes me want to go read those, that's for sure. So Host is the name of the essay about American conservative radio. Why is conservative talk radio more prevalent than liberal talk radio? And that's again, another considerably nuanced take. And fuck it. Okay. All right. Next up, we've got American Moonshot, John F. Kennedy, and the Great Space Race. And this book is what it says it is. This is the history of the Moonshot project and how Kennedy spearheaded that endeavor to land a man on the moon in our time. So that would not have happened without John F. Kennedy. Apollo 11 would not have, NASA wouldn't have even existed without John F. Kennedy. So that's what this book is about. There are I looked this up after I read this book. There are over 500 books about the Apollo 11 program. And this book itself ends before Apollo 11 even launches. This book ends basically with the assassination of Kennedy, because the focus of this book is on Kennedy's role in getting that project off the ground. And this book speaks very highly of John F. Kennedy, but it does stop short of hagiography. He was a typical politician in that he would leverage his position and his power and his authority in any way that he could. Same with Vice President Johnson and everybody else in the administration. But I think the biggest treat for me in this book was the treatment of Wernher von Braun, the former Nazi officer who developed the V-1 and V-2 rocket programs under Hitler, and the details that this book goes into with that program. I know about Wernher von Braun sort of loosely. What I didn't know is that he was somehow able to turn a blind eye to the employment of slave labor in developing the V-2 missiles, and how many people died under his command as slaves working for the Nazis. That was eye-opening. And then we just brought him over here because he's a genius. He's brilliant, and he's the reason we got to the moon. He built off of Robert H. Goddard. That's his name. So Robert H. Goddard was a rocket science pioneer, and von Braun built off of his work, and that's how we got to the moon. That ethical question is handled. Has never been maybe better handled, I think, in any other book that I've read. So Brinkley did a fantastic job with that. Great book if you're interested in the space program, if you're interested in Kennedy, just American history in general. There's a lot of stuff. It's not just Kennedy. It's not just NASA. A whole lot of things got tied into this program. And Brinkley did a really keen job of looping in all of the associated kind of fields that led to the Moonshot program. All right, then we've got Haruki Murakami's newest book, The City and Its Uncertain Walls. Now, Murakami has been a bit of an a hit and miss writer for me. I made a list here of my favorite Murakami books. I've read 13. This is the 13th book by him that I've read. My favorites are The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, Kafka on the Shore, which is probably my very favorite, A Wild Sheep Chase, and 1Q84. I did not like Norwegian Wood. I didn't really care for his short story collection, First Person Singular, that came out a few years ago. Anyway, The City and Its Uncertain Walls is probably the most Murakami book that I've ever read. It's the most dreamlike, the most ambiguous, discursive. People play Murakami bingo. You could probably play blackout bingo with The City and Its Uncertain Walls. What I didn't like about it when I first read it was kind of this going back and forth between, we'll say, two worlds. The real world felt real, but then this other world, this sort of non-reality, dreamlike, ambiguous world, while it had more physical descriptions and some more details, it was impossible for me to latch onto. It feels like like I fell asleep while reading the book, and I'm now dreaming about a different version of the events. And I like books with like a lot of it with ambiguity as a central theme or as a central device. And I even like books with ambiguous endings if they're executed well. And this book kind of has all of that, but it wasn't working for me the first time I read it. And so I finished this back in February, I think, so a couple months ago. Since I've read it, though, I have started liking it more because it's that the nature of that other world that he experiences. He's unsettled as much as I am. He's confused by it and can't accept it and has kind of an impossible time relating to it for the same reasons that I did. The ambiguity is so much ingrained into the fabric of this book. I mean, it's right in the title, The City and Its Uncertain Walls. The borders, that liminal space between reality and this city is uncertainty. I'm going to definitely have to reread this book because after reflecting on it for a few months, my appreciation for it has grown incredibly. The same way my appreciation for one of his other books, the Colorless Tsuru I can never say this book right. I have to read it. Colorless Tsuru Tazaki and His Years of Pilgrimage. I read that when it first came out in the US, and I read it again the next year, and I read it again the next year. And it was on the third reread that it finally clicked, and I finally liked that book. But it took a lot of work for me to get that one. And I feel like The City and Its Uncertain Walls is going to be along that lines. But I feel like for the most part, I'm in good hands with Murakami. And I might even have to reread Norwegian Wood. A lot of people online love that book. I just found the protagonist to be a pill. I didn't like him. Maybe that's the point too. There's a couple other books here that I'm going to just go through really quick. This is a book of poetry by Billy Collins. It's called 9 Horses. I'm not real big into modern kind of free-form prose poetry, and that's mostly what this is. There's a couple in here that I did like. Some of these poems have at their core, well, all of these poems have at their core an interesting nugget of thought. It's plain language. It's not dressed up in overly dense, complicated metaphors. This is observational poetry. In a way, it's a very cozy book. And so I didn't dislike it. That's not the kind of thing that I normally go for. All right, so this book here, The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins, this book is freaking everywhere. You go into any bookstore in America these days, you're going to see this book. The premise of this, The Let Them Theory, is it's a way to distance yourself from trying to control other people's behavior, and so that frees you from the stress of them not submitting to your controlling efforts. It's a more mindful response to other people's behaviors, other people's expectations in your life. It's a book about managing your expectations. The thing is, I learned this lesson when I was like 25 years old. So it's not that I disagree with this book, and it's not that it was a waste of my time exactly, but it's 300 pages, and it could have been a 15-minute TED Talk. This book is the embodiment of it could have been an email. I don't know. And then we're going to end on a book that I hated, and that is Ready When You Are and Other Stories by Barry N. Malzberg. Now, Malzberg is a science fiction author. He's written a ton of books and a ton of short stories. He's very well regarded in a lot of science fiction circles. This is a collection of previously uncollected short stories that he wrote. And this specific edition includes an afterword written by the author for each story, kind of talking about the publication history. It is a rare thing that an author can talk about his own writing and make me like him less. He comes off as such an asshole in these afterwards. He's complaining about these editors at various magazines who passed over his stories, refused to publish them. But had I been the editor, having read all these stories now, had I been the editor of any of those magazines to which these stories had been submitted for consideration, I would have passed on every single one of them. I read a very wide variety of things. I like experimental stuff. I like serious books. I feel like I read pretty widely. I mean, I've got essays, murder mysteries, magical realism. I got all kinds of stuff here. History, poetry. And then over here, I've got a book of plays that I'm reading. This is by Peter Barnes. I'm reading The Ruling Class, but it's got a bunch of his other plays in here. I read plays. I've got a nonfiction book about writing called Subtext, which is, this is fantastic, by the way. We'll maybe talk about that another time. And I'm about 50 pages into Scalagrig by William Horwood. This is a book that I found out about on DutchGrayBeard's channel. So Dutch, thanks for the recommendation. I'm really enjoying this, and I'm probably going to give this the full treatment when I'm finished. So look for that. What I'm trying to say is I read really widely. And so when I say I don't like something, it's not because the style that it's written in or like the genre that it's written in isn't for me, because I read all these genres at all these different levels. Surface level to, funny, to experimental, to very serious. I like all of that stuff, but I hated Barry Malzberg's Ready When You Are and other stories. Well, okay, so that has been a stack of books that I did not intend on reading. I have been Eric Gronsky, and until next time, read something good.